Hey, what is up? It is Off the Air on the Record. My name is Marco, my sister Dani, the only brother-sister morning show duo, as far as I know. Still, no one has notified me that has not changed.
So we'll claim it. We'll claim it. We're going to run with it.
Even though we're not really on in the same city, I do a radio show at K100 in Toledo, Ohio. Dani is on the air in Frederick, Maryland at Key 103. Dan, how are you this evening?
I'm great. How are you? I'm so excited about, well, I say this every week, but I'm really excited about tonight because I followed this person for a long time and really interested to hear what's happening now. So.
Yeah, obviously each and every week it's like a kind of a homecoming for me. I worked with this person a couple of different times. A quick story before we get to him. I actually was a lonely night DJ at WVAQ in Morgantown, West Virginia, kind of just getting into my career. And I was big into night radio. And I emailed 4 of what I thought, in my opinion, were the 4 of the best night jocks in the country. Emails went out to Tony Fly in Minneapolis. They went out to JoJo at Kiss FM in LA, Kid Kelly in New York City at Z100, and one to Mathew Blades at Z-104 in Washington, D.C. Only one of those people, only one, emailed me back. We became friends. We've worked together. He's been a lifelong radio mentor and a friend of mine, and just an incredible human being. And I can't wait to get in tonight because this guy, he's got so many layers. It's going to be great to peel them off.
Yes.
So.
Yes, excited.
Yes. Well, we won't hold you any further here tonight. We're going to take Mathew Blades off the air and on the record. Ladies and gentlemen, he doesn't need an introduction. But here he is live from Phoenix, where he's lived with his beautiful wife and 2 kids for a long time, actually now. Mathew Blades. Mathew, thank you for being on our show here tonight.
Man, you got a high production affair here. I am impressed out of the gate.
Well, you know, we have a producer behind the scene. This is a big what I like to call low budget procedure. Low budget.
I'll take it. And listen, honestly, thank you for sharing that story up front and for letting people know how wonderful I am. I really appreciate that.
I didn't say it might have been much to your dismay that you answered the email. And
I actually thought you were going to end it with, and he invited me to move into his apartment, which actually did happen just like maybe a year later, right?
It did, yes.
I know. I remember that.
Yeah. It was in your apartment.
You just want to move in with me?
Yeah. Seems weird when you say it like that.
Yeah, it does seem weird.
I will tell you this, you just know the people, and I don't want to, like talent recognizes talent or whatever that saying is, but when you get with somebody that totally vibes with you, that and really in life a little bit, but more in the profession of radio and just loving the whole shebang of being on and throwing down a show and really performing and giving it your all. I mean, Mathew and I both had that drive and had that will to be the best and listen to other people and get better and really try to push each other as much as ourselves. And so when you meet somebody like that, it's a very special thing that happens. And so we did move in together. I did move in with you. You got me a job at Z-104 in Washington, D.C., which was a dream of mine to work in D.C., and you made that come true. And you've been really instrumental in a lot of my jobs since then. So I thank you, my friend.
Yeah, I know we're going to get to the whole journey, and I'm excited to unpack this thing. And you're absolutely right, man. I mean, so that would have been in the mid to late 90s,
right? And
I was still 100% obsessed with radio as a medium, and just you said it. I wanted to be the best in the biggest city, and I wasn't going to stop until I got there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you had an incredible drive. So this give us a quick tour of your radio. And so I always love these. Now mine takes probably almost 9 minutes to do. But so give us a quick resume of where you were, what you did.
Fired so many times, this wouldn't be such a long story.
Yeah.
I mean, don't make it sound like that's everybody else's fault.
Well, it's not. It is not everybody's journey. They're all different. And none of them is right or wrong, as they say.
It's gonna be fun. Yeah. So I got started in radio. Actually, the guy that taught me how to do the business was one of those dudes who ignored your emails, and Tony Fly. And Tony's still on the radio. I see he's working for Sirius XM, if I'm not mistaken. But I was an intern for Tony Fly at 101.3 KDWB. That is actually me at my first job. So let me walk you right there. So I worked with Tony for a little while, and I was going to this school in Minneapolis called Brown Institute, which some folks may remember in the Minneapolis area, but it was a really prestigious broadcasting school, and a lot of famous people that were on the radio back in the heyday went to Brown Institute. And Tony helped me land my first job at 104.7 KCLD in St. Cloud, Minnesota, where I did overnights for a year and 9 months. And there's a lot of funny things about that radio station, but none funnier than the longest positioning statement in the history of radio.
Well, you can't say that without doing it. So let's do you remember it?
If you had a 7-second intro, you were dead. You had no time left for anything. Yeah, we had to open up every break with 104.7 KCLD, giving you a better music mix and always at least 10 songs in a row every hour. Hi, my name is Mathew Blades. Every time.
Holy cow!
Yeah, you're not kidding. You're not kidding. You had
Love
to make
it.
a fucking cue card just to get through the thing the first few times, but we made it, and it was a great radio station. It had a lot of heritage. Meaning it was respected. People is a teeny tiny radio station in northern, central Minnesota, but a lot of people regarded it as a well-made top 40 radio station. And then that allowed me to actually go back to KDWB, where I was until I had a really serious life event take place, which we'll maybe get into a little bit later on. From then, I went to Power 106.7 in Midland, Odessa, Texas, to do afternoons. And then from there, I made the jump to WJET Jet 102 in Erie, Pennsylvania. And it was in Erie, Pennsylvania, where things are going really well. And the consultant for the station that I was beating in the ratings somehow got in touch with me and was like, hey, why don't you come work for us in Washington, D.C.? And so they are the ones that I owe the big break in my career to. Because they didn't want me beating Star, I think was the radio station in Erie. And so they hired me to one of these other radio stations, and I went to Washington. There I am with Christina Aguilera. That is like baby Mathew Blades. I mean, I'm guessing, Marco, that when you think about me, that's the image that comes into your mind.
That's the number one image. Talk about a jump from Erie. Do you remember the market that's from Erie to DC? That is a massive jump.
I don't remember what publication it was, but remember there was some publication.
It's called Jump of the Week.
The jump of the jump of the week, or the jump of the year, I think, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was the jump of the week or the year or the month or whatever it was, because I think Erie, Pennsylvania was market 148, and I went up to market 8. DC was number 8 at the time.
Yeah.
Which didn't come with a lot more money, but whatever. It came with a bigger radio station.
Yeah. So you're on a DC in the nation's capital. That's where you and I met. We'll revisit that in a second. But and then you were doing nights.
City. Yeah. Then I leave there because they changed the format and they decide they're going to make it this crappy radio station. So I go to Kansas City and I worked there for a couple of years. Then I actually go back to DC to work back on the radio station that fired me, only so that they could fire me again. And then
wasn't enough. So
once wasn't enough. I was like, let me try this again.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the first time went really well. The second time went even better, if I'm being totally honest with everybody.
Yeah.
And I'm serious. Like, the first time, they had to buy me out of my contract, and I had about 4 months left on my deal. And so I got like 4 months.
4 months of vacation.
And it was paid. And then the second time I left, I had 11 months left on my contract that they had to buy out. So it wasn't awful. If you're going to get fired, that's how I would suggest people do it.
Yeah. That is definitely.
So anyways, KC, DC, and then I go to Denver to work in country radio, which I know you're all about now. And then Milwaukee, where you and I reunited one more time. finally in 2010, I was recruited to come here to Phoenix, where I worked on Mix 96.9 for 12 and a half years until I left.
Yeah. Now, we'll kind of cover that because that's an amazing story. Because obviously, radio, the big thing is that you're going to get fired, you're going to leave, things are going to happen. It's always a moving business. It's a very painful business to be in. It's very cutthroat. It is not nice. But you have done something that I don't know that I know anybody that has ever done, which is you were not fired from your last job. You were in the middle, but they actually wanted you back. And you said, you know what? I'm going to go do something else on my own terms. And that is an incredible thing. Talk about that, man.
Well, honestly, it's not a super sexy story. So if anybody's hanging on here for some beautiful story here, it's not quite that. It's really, I think COVID hit everybody differently, and it impacted all of us in its own way. And I like to say that COVID was the great exposer, right? If there was something underlying, COVID exposed it. And for me, that was certainly a truth. And things in the later stages of my career weren't moving the way that I wanted them to. I don't know that I was doing the radio show that I wanted to do. It started to become a whole lot more about what my Instagram posts looked like versus my break at 7:20 in the morning. And then, they started to take the radio station I was on and just really tear it apart. Started, getting rid of everybody. They got when I made the decision to leave, I am not joking. When you showed that picture just a couple of minutes ago, that's me and Priscilla, who's still there. We were the only two people really affiliated with that radio station. We didn't have a program director. We didn't have an official music director. We didn't have a promotions director. We didn't have an air staff that was local. We were literally the only two people involved with that radio station, which came with a lot more work. And then in, kind of right when COVID got super messy and everything, it came with a huge pay cut for me. They had asked me, they said, we'll offer you a new deal, but it's going to be 50% of what we're paying you now.
Oh my God, half.
And now don't be too sad for me, because I was making okay money back in the day, but it wasn't not enough where I could afford a 50% pay cut, right?
Yeah.
I can't even. How can somebody even ask that with a straight face? Especially when you're the only live beings in the building and they've cut everything else down to where they can. That's unreal.
Yeah, listen, I know the company that I worked for was between a rock and a hard place, and I don't take it personal. It was, I was one of probably 100 people that was getting that same kind of presentation put in front of them. And, it's one of those deals where, they came to me. You mentioned a few minutes ago about how ruthless and just tough radio can be. They gave me 60 days to make that decision. And, I had a family, I had a lot of things going on. I had just maybe a year and a half ago bought the biggest house that I could afford, and fancy cars, and had my kids and all the stuff. And so I was really in a rock and a hard place, and didn't really have what felt like in the time. I didn't feel like I had a lot to say. And so I accepted the deal. And then within months, it was becoming very, very clear to me that this was not going to work for me anymore. And when I say that, and this is what I mean about it not being a super sexy, fun story, is my body started to really physically shut down. I ended up getting shingles. I ended up starting to get a series of panic attacks. And it was finally on that last panic attack that I had on July 12th. So here we are almost 2 years later to the day, where I knew that I had to make it about face in my life and start putting myself back on a different trajectory.
Wow.
It's a big decision to make. Now you have a beautiful wife, Nicolene, and how did that conversation go, babe? I know I got this guaranteed money here, but I got a plan to do this podcast. Hear me out. What was that conversation like?
Yeah, I'm lucky, man. I have a really supportive wife. And I mean, she had a front row seat to my anguish, and I was not doing well, right? Like I was not doing well. Yeah. And so, I think she would have accepted or said yes to anything just to feel like she had me back a little bit, because I was the worst now, like if we fast forward to what I get to do for a living now I'm, one of the things that I'm so lucky to do is speak to people, and I get to, I hate that phrase motivational speaker, but I guess that's what I am. And I get to go out to people. And one of the things I'm super clear to say is at the height of that, I was the worst person for everybody. I was the worst husband, the worst father, the worst friend, the worst coworker, and I treated myself like absolute garbage. And so I think in that moment, it was pretty clear that, we just needed to do something to shake this up. And it felt like the only option, and it still feels like the right choice.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. Like 2 years later to feel like, you know what, this was exactly, I am where I should be, and that was all for the right reasons. That's excellent.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, I think anybody's capable of it, and it's not easy. It's a lot of hard work, but I did it once. I think I can do it again, and that's kind of the way that I'm approaching this thing. It's like,
Yeah.
take every tool that I have in my toolbox about how to start your career, which I think I was able to do pretty successfully, and now just rinse and repeat, do it again. And
Yeah.
the rules are simple, right? Show up, work hard, surround yourself with great people, and never stop moving. And if you do that, you're bound to find your way, or as I like to think, you will attract the right thing to you, and you'll find yourself in a great place. I love that photo, by the way. Thank you for showing that.
Yeah, it's a good one. So you've always been, and I know you personally, sorry, I mean, I know this about you. You've always been a pretty positive person. You've always been very into, and really you taught me early in when you and I were hanging out to the gut feeling to really understand what it is you're doing, not just the technical part of life or radio or friendships, but what is this? I don't want to say spiritual to say another word, but to get into your body. How are you feeling? And you were really the first one. You've always been that way. So I can imagine that's what your body was finally telling you, hey man, you got to listen to what you're actually doing physically here because it's not working.
Yeah, and that's it and it's this way for everybody, right? Like it's never just like all of a sudden boom and it's over. It's always a runway, right? And you always have a sequence of events that start to unfold, and then you start to go, okay, we need to make this change. But yeah, that's always, dude. I can remember being 12 years old and being deeply rooted in that spiritual feeling that you're just talking about, you don't have to call it spiritual, but call it connected or something like that. But yeah, I've always just felt that way towards myself and everything in my life. There's a deeper reason. There's no mistakes. We're here because we're supposed to be.
Yeah. And you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier in the monologue, but that major life event, you lost your dad at a very young age, and family's always been really important to you, and I know it still is with your kids and your family, and taking them through this journey. And I'm sure they're 100% behind you, and it's probably so much easier to do with a team of people. But tell me about learn from the people who lived it. This is the podcast, or what is it what you're doing now? What is exactly that?
It's a movement, really. I think that's what I hope it is. There's where we are now and where we hope to end up. And learn from people who lived it was really birthed after my retreat. So after that third panic attack, I decided I needed to get some real help. And, the story that I love to share goes like this. I'm sitting in the emergency room. It's 10 hours later. Nobody can get my panic attack under control. We're doing every single test that we can on me. And when they all come back and they say I'm physically fine, like, I know I don't have a choice. I'm not an idiot. I know I don't have a choice. Like, it's time to start owning the stuff that's literally running my life and owning me. And so I made the decision to go get treatment. And I mentioned that because I'm proud of this moment. Do you know this? I don't know if you know this, and I should have shared this clip with you. But when I made my decision to walk away from my radio show to go get help, Howard Stern brought that up on his first show back from vacation and said, quote, I should have taken a note out of the playbook of Mathew Blades, right? And so
wow,
it was kind of cool to get the King's validation that I was doing something the right way. But
yeah.
I went to that retreat, man, and I had to get to work on some of this stuff, and we all have it. And I know this isn't the podcast where we want to go deep and talk about all of our feelings and stuff, but for me, that was a real critical step to getting myself back. And, you mentioned my father's passing. And it's worth noting that any of us, and we'll just spend a couple of minutes on this, but any of us that experience that kind of trauma in our lives, right? And it doesn't have to be that massive, right? Not everybody needs to be like me and watch their dad die. That's a really awful thing, and I wouldn't encourage that for anybody. But we all have things that happen to us along the way, and they kind of wire us in a certain way.
Right.
And radio had so many similarities to my childhood and to the things that I was faced with. It's not even funny. But when I left the retreat, I just put myself in front of a microphone, not too dissimilar from this, in a room, and I turned off all the lights, and I just recorded for 4 hours. I just sat in my chair and I just word vomited everything. Like, if I said it to a therapist, I put it on the tape. If I said it in a healing session, I put it on the tape. And then after I got done with that, I had a couple of friends listen to it. And I was like, hey, man, is this too much? Because, it was a lot. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, I'm crying, I'm shaking, like I'm sharing some things about my life. I'm going, it's like, I was not private on radio, but we on the air, we share what we want people to know, and nothing more, nothing less. And so there was plenty of stuff that I had shared along the way, but nothing as in depth as I had gone there, right? Like, I was telling stories about my childhood and my addictions and my father and my relationship with my mom, and like all of these things that impact us along the way. At any rate, these two friends listen to the podcast. First one calls me in tears and says, that just changed my life. That just changed everything about the way that I'm going to live moving forward. You have to put this out there.
Wow.
And in that moment, I said, we have a real opportunity to learn from people who lived it. That's how it came out. And so I was like, well, we have a podcast. We have something bigger than a podcast, but we have what I hope one day is a complete podcast network where literally you'll be able to go to learnfrompeoplewholiveit.com, click a few buttons, and you'll have your own podcast where you can share your stories in a way where you will help other people get through their journey. Because, as I like to say, we're all just walking each other home. Ram Dass is the guy that said that way back in the day. And I know that's true, man. Take the shittiest thing that ever happened to you and stop asking why, because the only reason it happened to you is so you can help somebody else. End the discussion.
Well, human beings by nature, it's funny, we're all sitting in front of a microphone, but we're very communicative. I mean, it's, the feelings, the sharing, the things that make you great on the radio, make you a great communicator. That is not, a lot of people can't do what you did. Number one, That's really hard to put there's a lot of people just can't do that. But being able to see somebody else or hear somebody else's story, it really impacts other people, because even if they can't do that, you're sort of doing it for them.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing. Look, our culture, I'm amazed actually that you were able to kind of bridge that position to be that. It had to have been cathartic, number one, just to kind of have that all out. But culturally, we as a culture don't usually allow men, especially, to be that vulnerable and open. And I think it's fantastic, because I think you will, because of your talent, reach so many people that look at you as an example and say, oh my gosh, if he can do it, I can do it. And so I think that is to be applauded. And I do hope that this is a movement and start of something amazing, and shows people, all people, but certainly men, that you can do this and still be male, for lack of a better word, really. And that you don't have to take away the man card or any of that. Like, you can still be a loving husband, a wonderful father, a strong, dominant male in your industry, and still show this vulnerability. I think it is absolutely awesome.
Thank you. I mean, ask Marco. I've never really had any problems with my emotions.
Yeah, no, you haven't. You haven't. That's why you and I were you were good for me because I'm the complete opposite of that
That's right.
part.
That's how I
But
always felt about our relationship. I felt
yeah.
like you kind of alpha male pulled me a little bit, and I kind of threw some estrogen into your situation. Was like, hey, calm down a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely made me see. I did. I grew a lot with you actually, and no looking back, I can say, man, I really the spiritual side wasn't really what or just the thought process of how you got to certain decisions, big decisions. And obviously you've made a lot of really great decisions. And
Jury's out on that last one, but yeah.
I mean, for your health, you might not be here had you not made that decision.
Yeah.
So,
oh, look at that, Martha Stewart.
Hey.
So, what is the transition like from talking into a microphone and spilling your guts and being real and being open? Like you said, we kind of say whatever we're going to say, to then being on a stage with a microphone with a bunch of people looking at you. I mean, it has to be a little bit different.
Amazing in the best way, right? Like I even say it on the stage sometimes. I'll even say to people, like, I don't think you guys get it. For 27 years, I was in a box with nobody looking at me, and I had no idea what was landing, what was resonating. And now I get to look out into the crowd. I get to see people laughing, see people smiling. I get to see people crying. I get to see people shifting. I get to see people getting uncomfortable. It's really cool to flip this coin after 27 years and do this thing, because while there's certain things about radio that I don't love, one of the things that I do love is how well they prepared me for this next phase of my career.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the radio a little bit. Obviously,
Sure.
you were fantastic on the air. Always very, very good and delivering a message. You still are good at that. What are some of the things? Let's start with this one. Radio's gotten to a point now. Obviously, we talk about how it's it can chew you up and spit you out real quick. But and with all those people that got laid off and a lot of them haven't come back, it's changed so much since 1997. What do you think the state of radio is for? Let's just start with morning shows, really. And then do you think, and I ask everybody this, is it salvageable radio?
All right. So I have a kind of a harsh answer on this. And so hang in there. Radio still has a place. Morning show radio still has a place. Smaller towns are still connecting to their local radio stations. Big cities, I think people are more and more not tuning into their local morning show. Now, that there's exclusions to that. In cities like Chicago, for example, where there's a lot of traffic, or Washington, D.C., or New York City, or even in L.A., where you have a lot of congestion and people are spending an hour in their car, I still think there's some life left in it, right? But if you just look at the numbers across the board, and even the people that are number one now have half the share that they did back in the day.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you're still number one, but you're number one with a tiny ass audience, and you can start a podcast and reach more people than you can on the radio. I remember when I moved to Phoenix, Arizona, our Q was something like, I don't know, 500,000-600,000 or something like that in a week. And I think when I left, it was in the 200s.
Yeah.
And for those of you watching who don't understand that, CUM is basically the people that come in the store. So, to go from 600 to 800 to 200, and then the way that we're radio's weighted now, or not weighted, but rated now with PPM, it just does present itself, I think, a lot of challenges. And the people that are still in it, that are still doing it, they just gotta stay so true to themselves, and they gotta stay so true to the message of radio. Because I don't know if you guys feel this way, but it's so funny to me, because for the last few years of my radio career, all I heard about was social and podcasts. And then all I heard from the radio point of view was shut the you-know-what up, keep your breaks short, segue into the stop sets, because any chatter's bad, blah, 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 blah. And now we're finding out that people actually want to hear conversation. That's why they tuned into the radio. They want to hear what you have to say about anything. And the programmers have done the worst job of taking that away and not trusting us with that message and not trusting us with our ability to connect. And that's why I think you're seeing, so many people taking a bad face and say,
Well,
screw it,
and
I don't need
I
it.
think, because I'm in a small market and still in it, and I'm wondering if that's not because back in the day when we were all first in radio, I mean, I was in radio in 1986 the first time.
Yeah.
The people that were in it were, it was this old school 24-hour, there weren't these limitations, so these personalities could be built and formed and nurtured. And so many people have transitioned out of radio, maybe into other things or whatever, especially today when with the layoffs and all of that. They're putting people on the air now with such strict guidelines because they're not those nurtured personality. They're not allowed to grow. You don't have the overnights where somebody can test out different things. You don't even have really live 7 to midnights in most small markets anymore. It's all tracked, and you bring in a voice tracker from somewhere else for midday position. There's no nurturing, so they want this script. But I agree with you. I think radio is really missing the boat. I think now is the biggest time to allow those big personalities to form, to nurture those personalities and give them the time to do that, because it's so sanitized now. It's really.
Listen, if I was a program director, Dani, my advice to my air talent would be put a record on when you feel like it. Otherwise, keep talking.
Yeah,
I mean, really, I mean that with my whole heart. Like,
yeah,
and if people
same.
don't like it, they don't like it. But the people that love it will be so passion filled for you that they will never turn you off.
Yeah.
And we just gotta, and listen, if you can't trust the person behind the mic to do that, then you've hired the wrong person.
Right. Exactly. Well, and that's where I think the biggest problem lies, right? We were talking about this before we went on the air. I mean, radio right now, the pay scale is, like you said, worse than a teacher. And so if you're trying to find somebody to hold that reign, I don't know if you're looking at the right place. So
well, now more than ever, you need personality radio, and you need people that can do that can be, because think about it. I mean, radio when you and I were, especially in the late 90s, early 2000s, and a whole period, it's basically TikTok. It's a bunch of creators creating great content that keeps you there. It's all moved to that. But you're right. And I get it. I'm still doing radio today, so it's all about social media. Did you post yet? What are you doing here? And there's a lot of things that, I mean, the air portion of my show is almost an afterthought at this point. I mean,
I know. Isn't that so sad? I mean, I remember one of the most infuriating meetings I ever had. We spent 45 minutes talking about social media, and we spent about 4 minutes talking about what we had actually done on the show that morning. And I was like, where am I? What are we doing?
Yeah.
And I still don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah. Well, you've chosen to do something else. So you've removed.
Well, that's right.
That's good. So going back, what was the favorite, we did a lot of great stuff in Milwaukee, a lot of, promotional events, a lot of stuff for charities. What is one thing that you look back in your radio career and you're like, you know what, man, that was pretty darn spectacular, whether it was an event or an idea or maybe something that you started that got bigger than you thought it might?
I think it really, there's a few things, but for the sake of this conversation, one of them comes to mind, and that is a really special playground that you, me, Aaron, and the entire city of Port Washington came together to build in 5 days in Possibility Playground. We were able to be a part of something that was so special and so meaningful. And it's still there. It's still moving. I can bring my kids back there and show them that post with our name on it still. And so let me give a little color. We were in Milwaukee, and a woman named Marty McGarry reached out to me, and she said, "Hey, listen, I'm a teacher and I want to build this playground that's accessible for everybody. Meaning, like, if whether you're handicap, or you're wheelchair bound,
Right.
or you don't have the use of your limbs, or you're blind, or you're deaf, or whatever that means for you. If you're autistic, like, literally, it's an accessibility playground. So it's made for everybody to use it. It had soft surfaces. It had just the right height on this, safety measures put in every single way you could possibly imagine. And I got so excited by the idea. And then she told us that we were going to do it in 5 days. And I got even more excited because we had an opportunity to dust off, like, that. What do they call those things? Those old, like old RV broadcasting things.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, the old boom box or whatever.
That's it. That's it. So we brought the boom box out
Yeah.
to Port Washington, right there. We put it right there on the grounds of
Yep.
Possibility Playground. And for the next 5 days, our content went from talking about music and our life to, hey, they're putting this together and they could really use 4 cases of 2-inch nails. If anybody's listening and can bring down 4 cases of 2-inch nails, thank you so much. Hey, the guys are hungry. If anybody would be willing to donate some pizzas for lunch, we've got 50 volunteers down here. And literally that community came together in such a big way, in such a meaningful way, that 6 days later, we had built that playground and it still stands today. So I think when I look back, that's one of the most proud moments that I'll ever have in radio, and specifically because it's still there. It still stands and people are still using it.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
That is great. I mean, when you look back in your life, and that's a great thing to say. You know what? We put something there that is useful for everybody. It's really, and you're talking about in the 90s. That was the first, in being all inclusive. That those vocabulary words weren't really around then.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
so-
well, this was like
Yeah.
2000 and
Oh yeah,
this was 2000 and
2003.
probably 8.
or 8. Yeah,
But still, yeah, you're right. Nobody was having the inclusion discussion yet.
yeah. So there you are. Is that Rob Thomas?
That is. I there's nobody I interviewed more in my life, in my career, than Rob Thomas.
Really?
Yeah,
That's-
yeah. I probably interviewed him a dozen times, and it got to a point where he would walk into a room and we would just laugh.
Do you ever run out of questions? You're like, so what's new? I guess that would be.
But I remember one time we were sitting there talking, and it was about the 6th time or something that I had interviewed him, and so I was kind of maybe asking a little bit too much friendly kind of questions and just trying to make small talk. He finally goes, "Hey man, I got to be on the stage in a little bit. Can we get to the interview?"
You're like, that was the interview. What are you kidding me?
I know. I think, wait, we're not just friends having coffee? This is weird.
Can we get to the interview? That's great. Well, what is
just hanging out, Rob? I got to record. What you want?
I was hoping you were gonna be friendlier. He's in Maryland on Thursday. I could just call him up and say, "Hey."
He's awesome.
Yeah.
I have nothing bad to say about Rob Thomas. In fact, my favorite Rob Thomas story is we were interviewing, it was the first time that I interviewed him. He was playing the 930 Club in Washington, D.C. And during the interview, his throat was really scratching. He even made this comment to me about, like, I'm a little nervous for the show tonight. And I said, dude, you need some throat coat tea, which I've recommended to millions of people.
Oh boy, you should have stock in throat coat. I forgot about that till you brought it up. Boy.
Yeah, I probably sold you on it too.
Oh yeah, dude, throat coat.
I went back to the station. I grabbed my box of throat coat tea and I brought it over to the venue and I gave it to him. And I don't know if you ever used it or took it, but that's our little joke. I'm the throat coat guy.
Yes, you are. So sort
Which
of
could be a porn name too, I think.
Yeah. Good. You don't want to Google that one. You don't maybe have safe search on when you Google
Yeah,
it.
I start.
Oh, guy, what is that? Hey, what does that look like?
Yeah, you're like, okay.
I have to joke. Like, there's a lot of questions.
Yeah, babe, the police might be coming over. I just Googled throat coat guy.
Yeah.
It's not good. What is the? Let's go with the opposite. So, who was the worst interview you've ever interviewed?
Huh. I wouldn't say worse, because here's how I always approached interviewing. you're going to get out of that person what you pour into them.
Yeah.
So if they walk in the studio and you don't treat that like it is the greatest homecoming of their life, and you're so happy to see them and welcome, and what can I do to make you feel comfortable, you'll get a bad interview. I promise. Yeah. And if you sit somebody down and you ask them a contentious question first, you're going to get a bad interview out of them. Yeah. And so I never really had what I would declare a bad interview. I would say, though, that I had a moment that I'm less than proud of, which is I was interviewing. It was like an idol of mine, Kevin Spacey. No, not Kevin Spacey. Who's the other Kevin that was in The Usual Suspects?
Oh,
okay. Anyways, I'm interviewing this guy, and I'm a big fan.
Kevin Spacey, isn't it?
I thought.
Yeah, but he was in that movie, but it was the other one. It was another one of the stars in the movie. And at any rate, I said something like, one of my favorite movies by you is The Usual Suspect. And he was like, well, it's Usual Suspects. So I guess it's not really your favorite movie. And he just kind of shut down after that. And I was like, okay, let's get hung up on the S. Really? We're going to get that worried about the S.
Kevin Pollak.
Yes, that's exactly right. He was in town. He's a comedian that night.
Yeah, he's a comedian. Yeah. Not very funny on that.
Apparently
statement.
Not.
He was so rude. But you know what? And I don't blame him. He was on this radio show with this dude he'd never met. It was 7:30 in the morning. He was probably exhausted. I don't
know why they do comedians at 7:30. That is that's a recipe for a disaster, really, to be honest.
Yeah. It's the worst thing you could do because they're not funny. They're irritated. All comedians wake up pissed off in the morning and they get funnier as the day goes on.
Exactly. Can you remember back to a time in your radio career? Oh, well, sitting there, we got to have temper talking. So Matthew and I are huge hockey fans, obviously.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that I'm a little jealous. You're skating there with the Phoenix Coyotes. Now, talk a little bit. You were the voice of the Coyotes, weren't you? How did you land that thing?
Yeah, I was what they call the in-game arena announcer. So I was the hype man for 4.5 seasons, and I was lucky enough to do that at the best that the Coyotes have ever been. We hope that they'll get back there one day again, but that's an uphill battle.
I can say this now. I've been on the ice with some pro. I am never bigger than anybody. You actually look like you're an NHL player.
I know he really does.
I am a tall. I'm 6'3", and so you put me on skates, I'm like 6'6", 6'7".
Yeah.
Right? Like I was a big dude. And that's Tyson Nash for the record. In that photo, I was so lucky, man. I got to play in so many charity games. I got to know all those guys. I was just texting with Tyson the other day, and I'm from the hockey perspective. I'm so fortunate. Still my world. I'm a high school hockey coach now. Have I told you that?
No.
Wow.
Yeah, I run this club down here called Desert Vista DV. It's where my sons play high school or go to high school. And I'm really fortunate, man. I get to coach my sons in hockey as I've been able to do since they were 2 years old.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
That is great.
Awesome. There's Jeremy. You know who that is?
Oh, Jeremy Roenick. Come on, dude. Of course I know who that is.
Yeah.
That is.
So he still lives here in Arizona. My favorite Jeremy Roenick YouTube video. He finds a rattlesnake in his backyard. He puts a hockey stick on its head, picks it up, and whips it back in the desert.
That's awesome.
That thing's probably still flying.
Only somebody who's taken 1 million pucks to the head would think to pick up a rattlesnake.
Oh yeah.
Roenick really was the not to get into crap. I mean, we're on a podcast here, but was really like the one player that I comp him to is Ovechkin, because Roenick would fight you. He can score. Actually, the first time I ever saw Jeremy Roenick, I was flipping around and he was always in Chicago at that point, I think, and he intercepted a pass that was in the air. He knocked it down with a stick. They were shorthanded. He skated back. He scored a goal. And I'm like, this dude is a sniper. But I've always been my favorite JR story. Do you ever hear him tell the story about beating Michael Jordan at golf? Oh God, dude, you have to, it's too much to put in here, but you have to YouTube. Right, Jeremy Roenick talks about, he's, because Mike's a big gambler and he took a lot of, this is like, I think it was like game 6, he's in Chicago at the time and Michael had an NBA finals and he does not like to get beat and Roenick beat him and on 18 and it was like 4:00 and he's playing and Mike's like, we're going to go around again. And he's like, what? And he had lost like $50,000 to him. He's like, we're gonna play it. He's like, Mike, you got a game in like 3.5 hours. He's like, let's go again. He played him again. So Jordan played 36 holes of golf and then scored like 60 points in one of the playoff games. But Ronak took a lot of money from him. But that story is amazing the way he tells it. But obviously hockey's is as big between you and me. But
are you
that's
still skating at all?
A little bit. I do a little bit. Yeah. There's once you get to I have to worry about like hammies at this point, and I had my son in Milwaukee. I got him skating a little bit, and I was just showing off on the ice because he was like, "Hey, look what your old man can do!" And it's just on basically the Pettit Ice Arena. It's a giant loop. It's where they actually practice for the Olympics. And I'm skating all backwards and forwards, and he started to kind of get impressed. And then I bit it. I must have I hit a chunk or something and went flying. My glasses flew off. I was all covered. It was right in front of like everybody.
Reading glasses on.
Oh
or glasses
yeah, they're gone.
Hey.
Everyone's standing there. My son's like, "Oh my God, Dad, you're so annoying." So a little bit, no, but not playing.
All you did was show him you were human. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. Can you think back in your radio career to because we get to do some fun stuff here, obviously on the radio. It's one of the great things about being on the air is you get to do situations you may not have ever thought about. Anything for you that comes to mind?
Yeah, I've got 2 stories that come to mind, like stuff that I never would have done unless I was on the radio. Yeah. The first one was back in Washington, D.C., where I was trying to raise money for charity. And I told my audience that if they got to a certain amount, I would jump out of an airplane, to which they quickly raised that amount of money. And weeks later, I was jumping out of an airplane.
How was that? Was that scary?
Have you ever done it before?
No, I'm not.
I have.
Danny, you've done it before. So you did a tandem jump?
Yes.
Tell me about your experience. I'll tell you about mine.
So I was in Australia off the Gold Coast, and the most terrifying part is like the first 3 seconds when you're leaving the plane. To me, because that's your only feeling of movement.
And until the last is this guy seconds, literally going to be able to stick this landing? The last 3 and the first 3, right?
Yes, exactly.
That's amazing. Yeah, I felt very much the same way as we got going. It was like what I remember. And for those of you who've never jumped out of an airplane before, first up, congratulations. That's actually the proper way to do it. You're actually just supposed to sit in them and fly to your destination. You're not actually supposed to jump out. But I remember like that. It's because there's so much wind force. Do you remember this? There's so much wind force coming in your mouth. Your cheeks are like, and they're flapping up and your mouth's getting dry and you're wearing these goggles so that your eyes won't bug out of your head or something like that. And it's like the most incredible adrenaline rush you can possibly imagine. Because I don't know about you, Danny, but like an hour or so after, I was ready for bed. I was so tired.
Yeah. Well, I was so jacked up for that hour. Like, I think the whole time we landed to get back to the hotel and all, I was like, you would have thought, it was amazing. It was unreal. But exhausted after.
There's nothing better though. And I will say this, the greatest part about jumping out of an airplane is when that chute opens up and you're in the air. It's so quiet.
It is quiet. Yeah.
And it's so peaceful. And you just get to see Earth with this bird's eye view. And there's nothing like that. There's nothing like that. Now, my second story is terrifying. I would never do it again. And I would never recommend to anybody that they ever do it.
Oh, gosh.
Wow. What happened?
What do you think it is?
Never do it again. Well, because did
you get waxed?
I was gonna say, did somebody stun gun you? That would be it.
So I had this producer, and you showed his picture earlier. His name is Justin, and you know this about me, Marco. I have a good balance of feminine energy in me, right? And so I'm not what most of the boys refer to as the alpha male. That's not in my DNA. And we were having this stupid discussion on the radio about, like you said it earlier, Danny, man cards. It was like, okay, so what does it take to actually have a man card, right? And so we just threw on a whim. We threw it out to our audience, and we're like, all right, so what would we have to do to earn a man card? Which, talking about that in 2023 almost makes me vomit.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, well, you'd have to do the firefighter challenge is what we came up with. You'd have to learn how to drive and park an 18-wheeler.
Oh my God.
You would have to get a tattoo.
Oh no.
There was something else in there, and then the final thing that we landed on was that there was nothing more manly than getting on the back of a real live bull and riding a bull.
Yes. I went 3.5 seconds on a bull named Fu Manchu, dude.
That's right.
That's how you do it.
And so I against better judgment participated in the man card challenge. And this is how fun. This is a funny radio story because we brought it up on the show, right? And that morning, program director walks in, typical program director fashion. I don't know if we can do this.
Corporate's not going to let this fly.
Yeah.
Corporate's going to have a hard time with this one. We're gonna need to get the attorneys involved. Long story short, the company that I was working for at the time made me sign a waiver that if I got hurt, I couldn't use my insurance.
Oh my God.
My God.
Not that you wouldn't sue them, not that you wouldn't bring some kind of a lawsuit.
All right.
You're just not going to use our insurance.
You can't get fixed.
It's the stupidest thing
Jesus.
ever. And my dumbass signed it. That's how
Yeah.
dumb I am. I signed it.
Oh my God. So did you do all 5 of those things or did you just picking one?
Oh, got the tattoo. Love
Yeah,
it.
You got a tattoo.
It's my beautiful Buddha, it's a laughing Buddha sitting in a lotus flower holding up.
Let me tell you something. I got one there and I know that hurt.
Mother, man. That is tough. Especially when they
That's
get
like
down here.
Yeah, that's like the worst possible place you can get it.
Oh, it feels like you're being cattle prodded. It's what I imagine those people in those weird movies feel like when the electrocution things are being put on their nipples.
Yeah.
Oh
probably.
my gosh.
So did you park
did the tattoo, did the firefighter challenge, that's no joke, man. That's a really
So you got to
tough
carry
thing.
like 80 pounds up like 15 flights of stairs,
Oh
right?
my gosh.
Your full dress with the oxygen tank, which weighs 60 pounds or something like that. You're up and down 6 flights of stairs 3 times. Then you're out the back door. You take one of those gigantic tractor tires. You flip it 5 times out, 5 times back. Then you run to the front of the building. You pick up a 135-pound dummy. You drag it 50 yards. Then you go over to a car. You pick up a sledgehammer. You beat the shit out of the door until you get it to open up. And then you go over and you pick up the fire hose and you hold the water while you blow the water on the thing.
Now, how many?
My gosh.
At what
I hope
point
you
did
had like 3 days to finish that because that.
At what point did you throw
Minutes.
up? Where did you throw up at?
Thankfully, and this is no joke. Thankfully, I was literally at the height of my physical life when I did this thing, and it had just kind of hit me at a point in my life where I was in the gym 5-6 days a week. I was playing, hockey. I was in great shape, and so I was able to endure it. But if I were to try to do that right now, what you just said would be so accurate. I think I would have made it up that first flight of stairs and I would have passed out and fallen down all of them. But the bull ride is the culmination of the event. We invited our entire audience out to watch me ride this bull.
Now, is this some stable that you were in? So explain. Yeah, because
Random bull.
Yeah, right. So you lived in Tucson, so you know that we're in Arizona. It's kind of the wild, wild west. Like, it still is. Lots of cowboys here, lots of that kind of thing. And there's a couple of places up in Cave Creek, Arizona, where they still have bull riding. They bring in bulls, and the guys still do the thing on a Friday and Saturday night. And we worked out a deal where they were nice enough to let me ride this bull named Backfire.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Right. They said, you want to meet the bull? Yeah.
Wow.
Like, what's his name? Backfire. I was like, this is a bad idea.
I don't want to meet.
So we get to the thing. My wife's there. My kids are there.
Are you nervous?
Hundreds of people. I am sweating buckets. I have never been so nervous in my life. And they put the Kevlar vest on me. And they asked me what kind of helmet I asked them rather what kind of helmet I should wear. And they said, honestly, you can just bring your hockey helmet. That would probably be the best thing. It'll be the most comfortable for you. So I'm sitting there, got my blue Bauer hockey helmet on.
That should be the newest ad for Bauer.
Oh, yeah,
and
dude.
I've got this Kevlar vest on, a Wrangler shirt that I had bought for the event, Wrangler jeans that I had bought for the event, and cowboy boots, which I borrowed from a buddy of mine.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My misery is amazing. And so we get to the stable, and they walk you through this whole thing, and it's not like there's a training prior. Right?
Oh yeah, no.
You would think maybe I should spend a couple of hours working with somebody on how this is going to go and what to do.
Yeah.
No. I just show up to the stall. I show up to the pen, and I'm standing. The bull is below me, and the guy says to me, "I need you to put your boots on each side of his spine, and then slowly move your feet around his body." And that's how he knows that you're getting ready to mount him, and it's like game time. This was a bull that, truth be told, was probably going to go out to pasture in the next year or so anyways.
He was on the downward slope.
Does not mean he still wasn't 2,000 pounds and pissed off that somebody was on his back.
Yeah.
And so I mount this bull. I get on, and they tell me he's going to do this, and this. And then here's the kicker. They say to me right before they open up the damn gate, they say to me, if he bucks you when he goes this way, he's going to come after you.
What?
But if it was the other way, he'd be like, you're fine over there.
Because they get to learn their tendencies, right? They
Right,
get to learn what they do.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you're sitting on this bull. Did they strap your hand in there? Did you get it? They ratchet it down, right? Is that?
It's insane for anybody that's never had it done. Yeah. They put your hand literally, I'm just going to graph, kind of sits right underneath your ball sack is where they're asking you to put the thing. And then they tighten the rope down, and the rope's got so much rosin on it. It's so sticky. And that's what makes the bull buck, is that it's got this really tight rope around its torso. And so the bull is just trying to loosen that. Right. And if you watch, there's video of this on YouTube, but like you can literally hear me say to the guy, is my hand going to come out of this thing?
Whether you wanted to or not.
Yeah.
It might still be in there.
Am I going to be handless?
So they tighten you down on that thing so tight, but then the thing that they tell you is that you're actually using your legs to hang on to the bull. People think you're like trying to hold on for dear life with your arm. Your arms are just balance. You're really holding on to the bull with your legs. Which I'm here to tell you will produce grade 2 or 3 contusions from your kneecaps to your nutsack for 3 weeks. Literally 3 weeks. You will be purple.
Oh my gosh. So they break you. So now they leave you alone for a second before the gate pops, right? So
that's right. Everybody gets out of the way, and they're just talking to me. And I am at this stage. I have this thought, which is, you don't have to do this. Like,
oh, you're having that thought?
Yeah, I literally having that thought. Like, oh, you found it, man. Like, you literally, and that's the big long version of it. But yeah, there I am getting them. There's my blue Bauer helmet.
Oh my god,
this is incredible.
I love the Wrangler shirt pattern you chose.
Oh yeah, dude, that was looks like you were rolling in.
What?
As it looked like you were rolling in Cole's cash there with that thing.
A lot of it, and I really wish I would have put the sleeves down on it, because I mean,
bro, you look terrified here.
Dude, look at me, man.
That is that's actually when you were saying, I don't have to do this. That's what is actually going.
Well, these guys everybody's shouting instructions at me. 3 people got telling me what's going to happen, what I'm going to do.
Yeah, and whatever you do, you're like, oh, I got to listen to this part.
Yeah, you're like, holy cow.
Oh my God. And so they get out of the way, they open the gate, and the bull does literally every single thing that they say it's going to do. I by the way, stay on this thing for 4.8 seconds.
Oh, nice.
Holy cow.
And he comes running after me. And
so you went on to the wrong side. You must have gone off on the wrong side.
I did. I'm like, worst case scenario, I did all of it. And he came over, he charged me, and it wasn't the end of the world, but he did put a you'll see if the video goes, and it happens so fast, but he clips me with his it's like his front leg or something like that, and gives me the biggest bruise I've ever had in my entire life on the side of my thigh. Oh, here we go. Oh my God, I have so much anxiety right now.
Wait a minute.
Watch this. Now here he comes right after me. See it?
Oh, God. I just got to say something real quick. He looks really small compared.
Well, Matthew is so big. Like normally these cowboys are a little smaller.
Yeah, they're like jockeys, right? They're
exactly.
guys who are lightweight, and that helps them stay on. I don't think that bull was very excited about having somebody 6'3", 200 pounds on the back of him.
You literally could have probably clicked your heels, tucked your legs together around him, though.
Yeah, tied your ankles together underneath his belly.
I know. The video just doesn't do it justice. I mean, I would never do that again.
Yeah.
No,
I just have to say, too, there weren't any more children after the bull ride, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Oh, man.
Yeah, the bull neutered me.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, you never do it again, but it is great to be able to say, hey, you know what?
You've done it.
On a bull. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love it. So one of the cool things that I get to do in my new life is I've developed this really great relationship with the Durango Detention Center here in Phoenix, which is a juvenile inmate facility. And so 4 times a year and once a month, I go in and I teach classes to these juvenile inmates, and we just talk about life skills. And I will always pull out the bull story so that I get some credibility right out of the gate.
Oh yeah, you're not talking to some lame guy here, dude. I've been on a bull, bro.
Right. That's exactly right. And they love it. They eat it up, man. They want to know more. They want to know if I got stepped on. They want to know if I got horned. Like, they're into it.
Oh yeah, the gore, they love it.
What's the craziest thing you guys have ever done on the radio?
Danny, have you done anything yet?
I mean, I've always been the promotion director, putting all the air staff into different situations. So nothing crazy, because even in San Diego, I'm trying to remember some of the promotions we had out there were a little bit bigger, with a bigger budget than what we had here. Probably, the fighter jet thing, putting air staff on a fighter jet and putting them through things like that, I think were probably the biggest things I ever did. But yeah.
I got shot with a paintball gun inside the studio once. Actually, it was twice. It was supposed to be once, but he shot me twice. So that was good.
Remember when you cut your finger off in the studio?
I do remember that, but that was a trick.
That was the beginning of the end of that radio station. Actually,
that was the beginning of the end. Actually, there.
Our audience was like, "All right, listen, you had me until this stupid shit. Now I bring back Reitman and Miller, for crying out loud. I know they're retired, but can we coerce them out of retirement?
It's theater of the mind. I'm telling you,
guys are awful.
Oh my gosh, yes. So, well, that's good, man. Well, what do you think? I know we're getting close to getting out of here, and we're gonna have to probably do a part 2 with a lot of our guests here. And you're gonna be one of them, because we do have a lot of side stories here. But radio as an industry, I know you stepped away, and we kind of talked about this a little bit before. But do you think that? What do you think? What would you do? You kind of discussed it a little bit with the program. If you were a program director, you would let people do. But is that what radio has to do to be relevant again? Is to hire major personalities and let them talk, or what would be, if you had a magic button and you're now the owner of all radio stations? What would you do to try to salvage something out of a medium that a lot of people are saying not getting a lot of play from the younger kids?
And I don't know. That's such a tough question, right? Because every market is so different, and that's the thing, right? Is that it's not a one size fits all fix. What's going to work in Toledo is not going to work in Green Bay. It's not going to work in San Diego. It's not going to work in Miami, Florida, right? And but by and large, I'm not saying anything earth shattering here, but radio they have to cut the amount of commercials that they play. They have to find a different way to make that revenue so that there are fewer interruptions, because you're competing with mediums that have no interruptions. And so, you probably need to find a way to get that formula figured out. And I'm not saying that people expect you're going to be ad free, but what I remember, in the last few years that I was on the radio, when it came to Q4 and making budgets, it wasn't uncommon for us to have a 13 to 18-minute stop set.
Whoa.
And that's way too much of an ask for. My mom won't sit through 18 minutes of commercials to listen to me talk.
Right.
And so, you got to fix those things. And then honestly, you have to get back to the roots of radio, which is to serve your community. That's why radio was invented. Radio was invented as a public service for the community. And what we did, for example, with Possibility Playground is the kind of thing that I would just do all of the time. I would just be looking for all the different ways where I could involve my community and get them invested in the product and try to help them see that we're trying to do something together. And, that's going to be really, really hard to do when your midday person lives 4 states away or your afternoon person isn't even in the same country. You can't be live and local. And that's what we're missing. Radio doesn't feel like it did back in the day. And we could do something about that. I don't know we're going to get everybody back, but I think that's what we could do. And then the other thing that I would honestly do is I would put more podcasts on radio stations. I would take some of these music focused jukeboxes and I would make them podcast stations, and I would be 24/7 long form playing podcasts from all my talent in the market and letting my audience build a stronger relationship with them, because the deeper we build the relationship, the more, and you guys know this, right? I mean, it's literally the essence of winning in radio is to take the group that loves you and have them love you more and longer. And, and so, those are a couple of things that I would do, but ultimately there's just so many new distractions and there's so many new platforms and choices for people that, it's going to be tough, right? It's going to be an uphill battle. I still think radio is going to be relevant for a long time in a lot of cities, but I can promise you that in a lot of cities, it's absolutely like how we felt about the newspaper industry 10, 15 years ago. We were like, who's reading these things anymore?
Right. Yeah. Well, that is,
I mean, how do you feel? You're still in it.
You're right. You're right. You definitely, you hit the nail on the head. That's a great idea actually for the podcast. They can get podcasts. You still have, that listening force, listening in the car. People want to hear stuff, so you do, although it's way, way lower than it ever has been, but you're right. You have the connection, and everyone says locals and it kind of gets thrown away, but you really have to be a part of the community. You have to be woven into the fabric.
You can't just say it. You have to be it. That's
correct.
The thing. And this is, where my job in promotions, that guerrilla marketing, in the sense that you're on the street, you're talking to the people, you're getting the feedback. The problem is the feedback is never being implemented because the people you're relaying the feedback to are following some other formula. That's the disconnect to me. We're not taking what people on the street, because you always get, and you guys probably remember this, you always get that's just one person. And I'm thinking, when one person says it, 50 people are thinking it. They're just turning the dial and not giving us the benefit of that feedback. So, I think taking some of that information and really, shaping it to something else is important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also think
talking about things that people can get anywhere else.
Yeah.
You have to do what's different. Yeah. And that means talking about the littlest thing in your market. What were you going to say, Marco?
Well, I was going to say that, and really now more than ever, these throwaways, like today we're doing this thing called the Rib Off on Saturday. It's a big event. So everybody gets out and, you talk about, it's an experience, which is big. And tickets. And so it's Gabby Barrett and Low Cash, which is a pretty decent show for Toledo. And I actually say on the radio, hey, Spotify doesn't give you free tickets to experience what we're going to, because experience is a big word with millennials, and they want to have an experience. Sure. Mm-hmm. And it's something we can get. We're giving you tickets. So that throwaway, hey, we got to pay. And it was just, before it was kind of a pain in the rear. I got to give these dumb. Now it's like, hey, man, it's an experience. Let's all hang out together. Here's some free tickets to enjoy something and make your life a little bit better. That's really where radio's got to really, I think they can make up some ground there, because before, we got tickets, we got cars, we had a lot of great stuff, and we kind of just throw it away like, hey, we're doing this stuff. But if you can build something like, hey man, this is a great chance to come meet us. Everyone's going to be there. It's going to be a good time. You sort of position it a little different way. I think it goes a longer way, but you're right. It definitely is. You have to work a lot harder to have the same amount of things you did before,
Yeah, I just think if you're in any kind of medium to small market and you're talking about shit that they can get on their feed, like you've lost. Like
Right.
get local. And then the other thing I would tell people to do is get honest. Like start getting real, start getting vulnerable. The reason the podcast space is blowing up is because people are telling the truth. And we need to get away from the Z-104, more music, blah 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 blah. Get away from all that stuff. And like to your point with this rib event you guys have coming up this weekend, it's like if I were still on the radio, I'd be like, this is my community. This is where I live. This is where my kids go to school here. And we're gonna have this rib event, and I want to meet the people that are in my community. How different is that than caller 10? You got tickets to Rib Fest,
right? Exactly.
Connection there.
Right.
So that's the other charge for people is to just get honest. And I don't know, man. Radio just turned into a circus for me, and everybody was doing second date updates and War of the Roses and all this other stage crap that I was like, really? This still works? I mean, I can't tell you how many people, and probably when you and I work together, this conversation happened. Prank calls. We got to do this kind of thing. We got to do that. And me, bro. I was like, we're not doing
any of that. Yeah.
You're not going to convince Mathew Blades to be mean to people. Sorry. It's never going to happen. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to mess with people. I'm not going to play on their emotions. And it was just never going to be an ingredient.
Yeah. Well, you've always been different, and you've always been sort of a trendsetter. And now, 20 years later, look at it. Everyone is coming around, I think, to exactly what you're saying and your points, man. So you were right along this whole time. So you can.
I don't know if I'm right, but I have thoughts about it.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, we really appreciate you. Yeah, it's already. I mean,
we definitely need part twos with these guys.
So refreshing to talk to professional conversationalists. It's so amazing. And literally, if there's any part of radio that I miss, it's this. It's sitting around with two other people who understand how to have a conversation that people are trying to consume. Because it's different when you're in the real world. And, you ever have your friend come up to you like, dude, I got this great story for you. And you're like, awful. That was the worst story I've ever heard in my life.
Oh, dude, I'm telling you. And that, I'll be watching a TikTok video or a YouTube video, and I swear I'll be like, get to the point, please. I really want to know what you're going to talk about here, but you're killing me with this.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So it's been a wonderful experience. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you, man. And let's pimp some of the stuff you're doing. So where can people find you? Is it they can just type in Learn from the People Who Lived It and anywhere they get podcast?
Yeah. So the exact title is Learn from People Who Lived It. And so you can go to learnfrompeoplewholivedit.com, or you can just get the podcast anywhere. I actually have a little bit bigger of a project that I'm working on right now called the I Needed That podcast. One of my close friends down here in Phoenix is a guy named Chris Powell. And if that name sounds familiar, it's because Chris used to have a show on ABC called Extreme Makeover, the Weight Loss Edition, where he would take people that were really, struggling with their weight, and he would help transform them over the course of a year. And he built a really powerful platform for himself. And him and I, you showed his picture earlier, actually. One of the very first events that I did when I got to Phoenix was him and I, and we would take people to, that's exactly the website right there. And we would take people on these hikes. And for a lot of people, it was the first time that they moved in a year or 2 years, right? And and he's just an incredible human. And when I left the radio show, I called him up and I was like, man, listen, we get along. We love hanging out together. Why don't we try to do this podcast? And so we started recording, and we both knew it from the moment we hit the record button that this was going to be really special. And so we've got this podcast called I Needed That. And it's with myself and Chris Powell. And we really kind of, if it's about one thing or two things, it's about mental and physical health. And so, and then everything that comes around from that. But Chris and I are on this really cool journey together. The podcast is really exploding, and it's starting to get some notoriety. And we're about to, if you can believe this, we're about to embark on a mall tour here in Phoenix.
Oh,
Nice, bro.
To
You know
bring it
you
back.
made it when you go on the mall tours.
Hey, man, if it was working for Tiffany, it can work for
you
me.
know you made it.
That's
If
right.
it worked for new kids, it'll work for me.
Hey, the first time I saw Justin Bieber was in a mall. So, I mean, it can be done. It can be done.
Yes, there you go.
And how do people get in touch with you? You're on Twitter? I always see you on your Instagram.
Yeah, the Gram's the best place. At Mathew Blades Media, it's right there. And I saw Vicky's comment and love seeing her face there pop up. At Mathew Blades Media on the Gram is where you'll find me, and Twitter, and learn from people who lived it is where you can connect with me, not just for potentially being a guest on the show, but for all my speaking engagements as well. I'm actually coming out to. Didn't you work in Louisville for a while? I have a speaking engagement there next week.
I know. Well, I was Nashville and then Indy, and then right in the middle was Louisville.
Right.
Yeah, but never there. But that's a great little city, actually.
I'm excited to go. I'm only going to be there for 18 hours, but I'm really excited to go.
Yeah, well, good.
Well,
man,
anytime you come out east, you always know you got a place here, man. And I think the world needs to hear this message, and I firmly believe God put you in the place that He needs you to be, and I feel that wholeheartedly, really.
Yeah. Thank you. And I would be remiss to not say what I need to say to people who may be listening to us right now. It's like, it's really easy to get into a pretty dark spot. And there's a lot of really, there's a lot of suffering in the world right now. And people are angry and confused, and there's a lot of turmoil, and just there's a lot of, it can be a tough world out there, and it can be pretty easy for people to feel real beat up and broken. But I'm here to assure you that you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You just need to step back into your purpose. And if you can work with somebody, whether that's a friend or a therapist, to help you figure that out again, your life is going to take on a whole new meaning. And I couldn't be more serious about that statement. You're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. Step into your purpose and watch what happens to you.
Yeah. Awesome.
Love it. It's a great message.
Great message. Yeah.
Good times. Thank you very much. Mathew Blades, ladies and gentlemen.
Woo!
Love it. Off the air.
Thank you.
On the record. And man, we'll have to do a part 2 for sure. Thanks for
I would
stopping
come back
by.
anytime and talk to you guys.
Love that.